The sound came first. A frantic scratching, steady and determined, breaking the quiet of dawn. Tom pushed aside his curtain and frowned. There it was again, the neighbor's puppy. Its small paws tore the earth with desperate energy, spraying dirt in frantic bursts. The fence shook. The ground trembled in rhythm. And then, with one last shove, the dog disappeared, gone beneath the fence line, gone into the stillness of morning. Tom leaned closer to the glass. He had seen it before, almost every morning now. The tiny animal digging, wriggling, vanishing into the unknown. And each time, it returned hours later, dirty and exhausted, curling on the porch as if nothing had happened. He whispered to himself, "Where do you go, little one?" The thought unsettled him. Puppies usually chase balls, barked at leaves, begged for food. But this one, it seemed to have a purpose, a mission, something far beyond Tom's understanding. The hole yawned wider in the earth. Tom's chest tightened. This morning felt different. He couldn't look away. He couldn't ignore it any longer. He grabbed his coat. Tomorrow, when the puppy dug again, he would follow. Before we continue with this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Let us know in the comments where you are listening from. Tom woke before the sun. The house was silent. The world outside still half dreaming. But he was alert, waiting. He pulled the curtain just enough to see the yard next door. And right on time, the sound began. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The puppy, its tiny frame shook with effort, claws tearing the dirt. Dust and pebbles flew. Within minutes, the hole yawned wide enough, and the pup wriggled its body under, tail vanishing last. Tom's chest tightened. Now, he slipped out the back door, careful with the latch. The morning air was sharp and damp, clinging to his skin. He ducked low, keeping distance, following the faint jingle of the puppy's collar. The little dog moved fast, too fast for aimless wandering. It cut across the yard, through a break in the hedges, and into another stretch of grass. Tom followed, crouched and quiet, heart racing harder than he wanted to admit. The puppy didn't pause. Not for squirrels, not for the stray cat that bolted from a trash can, not even for the food wrapper drifting on the breeze. It kept going, steady, purposeful, through one backyard, then another. Each fence had a gap, each hedge a tunnel, each gate left just enough ajar, as if the pup knew every step by heart. Tom whispered under his breath, "You've done this before." By the third yard, his shoes were damp with dew, his jeans brushed with burrs from uncut grass. A dog barked behind glass. But the puppy didn't flinch. Its small paws beat out a rhythm on the earth, a metronome of determination. Tom slowed. Something about this felt strange, too deliberate. Puppies didn't plan. Puppies chase noise, light, food. But this one, it had a destination, a calling. He felt both foolish and unsettled, creeping behind a neighbor's dog like a thief. What would people say if they saw him crouched in the dawn, tracking a puppy through yards and alleys? He almost laughed at the thought, and yet his gut told him not to stop. The pup slipped into a narrow alley between two old garages. The shadows swallowed it whole. Tom hesitated at the entrance, the air thick with the smell of rust and oil. His breath echoed too loudly against the corrugated walls. He stepped in. The dog's jingle led him through, out to a stretch of land half wild. Overgrown lots where weeds towered waist-high. Crickets leapt as he brushed past. The puppy's small body pushed fearlessly ahead, weaving through the tangle. Tom stumbled once, catching himself on a rotted fence post. He could barely keep the pup in sight. Only its tail, wagging in steady rhythm, flashing between stalks like a signal. His mind began to race. Why here? What waited at the end? A flicker of unease slid through him. Was it food? Something dead? Was it dangerous? But when the puppy glanced back for the first time, eyes glinting in the pale morning light, Tom felt something else. A strange weight, as if the dog was asking him to keep coming. As if this wasn't mischief, but a secret. They crossed a ditch, shallow but muddy. Tom's shoes sank, sucking wetly as he pulled free. The puppy bounded across without effort, landing light and sure-footed. Then, finally, after what felt like miles, the pup slowed. Its ears perked, its nose lifted. Ahead, rising like a shadow against the thinning mist, stood an old structure, weathered boards, collapsing roof, a barn, or what was left of one, abandoned, silent, leaning as though it might crumble with the next strong wind. Tom froze. The puppy trotted straight to it. Through a gap in the sagging door, it slipped inside. Gone. Tom's mouth went dry. His pulse hammered in his ears. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to leave the strange place to the wild things it now belonged to. But another thought pressed harder. Why here? Why every morning? He wiped his hands on his jeans, took one slow step forward, then another. The grass whispered against his ankles. The barn loomed larger, darker. He reached the doorway. Wood groaned in the breeze, hinges rusted and cracked. He leaned in, holding his breath, eyes adjusting to the dim. Inside he heard it, not scratching this time, not digging, but a sound softer, fragile, alive, a chorus of tiny cries. The puppy barked once, sharp and proud, before disappearing deeper into shadows. Tom gripped the doorframe, heart slamming. Something was waiting in there, and he was about to find out what. Tom hesitated at the doorway. The barn loomed like a broken skeleton against the pale sky. Its roof sagged in the middle. The wood was gray, flaking, soft with years of rot. Wind slipped through the cracks and made the boards moan. Inside was darkness. The puppy had already vanished into it, swallowed by shadows. Only the faint sound of claws on wood told Tom it was still moving. And then came that other sound, the one that had stopped him cold. Small, fragile, alive, the cries of something hidden deeper inside. Tom's throat tightened. He stepped forward. The floor creaked beneath his boots, dust rising in thin clouds. He moved slowly, shoulders brushing hanging cobwebs. The air smelled of hay long rotted, mixed with rust and something faintly sour. He whispered under his breath, as if afraid the barn might hear. "What are you doing, little one?" The dog barked once, sharp and high, then vanished behind a pile of fallen boards. Tom followed, ducking beneath a splintered beam. His heart thudded louder with every step. And then he saw them. At first, his eyes refused to believe it. A nest of movement in the shadows. Tiny bodies huddled close, pressed together for warmth. Little mouths open in weak cries, whiskers trembling. Kittens, 5 of them, maybe 6, fur matted, ribs faintly showing through thin skin. Their eyes still too big for their faces, their mews thin and desperate, and curled around them, protective and proud, was the puppy. Tom froze, his chest filled with something that felt like both wonder and dread. He had expected trash, maybe a dead animal, maybe nothing at all. But this was impossible. The puppy licked one kitten gently, nudging it closer with his nose. Then another. Its tail wagged in slow circles, careful not to disturb the fragile pile. One of the kittens climbed weakly onto its paw, clinging to the soft fur, and the puppy stayed perfectly still, letting the small body settle. Tom crouched low, trying not to make a sound. His knees ached against the dusty floor. His eyes stung. The barn seemed to hold its breath around him. The puppy wasn't here to play. It wasn't sneaking off for scraps or mischief. It was caring for them, watching over them as if it were their mother. He covered his mouth, fighting back the sharp ache rising in his chest. How long had this been happening? How many mornings had this little one dug its way out just to keep these kittens alive? The thought twisted inside him. Somewhere out there, the kitten's real mother had either vanished, or worse, and in her absence, this puppy had stepped in. A shiver ran down his spine. This wasn't just instinct. This was something else, something deeper. He edged closer, careful not to startle them. One loose board shifted beneath his hand and groaned. The puppy's ears shot up. Its head whipped around, eyes glowing faint in the dark. For a moment, Tom felt pinned by that gaze. Protective, fierce, not a game, not a secret, a duty. The puppy gave a low growl, soft but firm, not the sound of attack, but of warning. Don't come closer. Tom raised his hands slowly. "It's okay," he whispered, voice barely carrying. "I'm not here to hurt them. I just needed to see." The pup's tail lowered, still but not tucked. Its eyes studied him, weighing something, before it turned back to the kittens. With delicate care, it licked their heads again, soothing their cries. Tom stayed frozen, not daring to breathe too loudly. His heart swelled with a strange ache he couldn't name. The kittens pressed closer into the dog's warm body, tiny chests rising and falling. The pup curled tighter around them like a shield. For long minutes, Tom just watched, and with each second, the picture became clearer. This was no accident, no momentary distraction. The puppy had chosen this. Day after day, it had dug, run, crossed backyards, braved shadows just to come here, to keep these fragile lives alive. Tom rubbed his temple, shaking his head. "You've been carrying this all alone," he whispered. A kitten sneezed. Another let out a weak cry. The sound tore at him. He could see how frail they were, how close to the edge. And yet, against all odds, they had survived this long. Because of the puppy. He felt a swell of respect that bordered on awe, but also a creeping weight of responsibility. They can't stay here. Not like this. Not in this broken barn. He swallowed hard, gaze flicking to the pup. "But what happens if I take them? Would you understand? Would you let me?" The puppy's eyes met his again, as if it had heard the thought. There was no way to explain what he saw there, but it felt like a message, clear as words. "They are mine. I found them. I will not leave them." Tom's chest tightened painfully. He backed away, careful, slow. He didn't leave yet. He couldn't. His eyes lingered on the fragile pile, the miracle of it. He thought of his own empty house, the silence that greeted him each night. And now this, a secret family bound together by something no one would believe if he told them. He drew a long breath, then let it out in a shaky sigh. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "I'll come back tomorrow." The puppy shifted only slightly, nose pressed to a kitten's fur. Its ears stayed perked until Tom disappeared back through the doorway. Outside, the morning was brighter. The mist had lifted. Birds were singing in the trees, but Tom hardly noticed. His mind was tangled with what he had seen. His hands still trembled. His heart still raced. A puppy raising kittens. The world felt different now, and he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't keep this secret for long. Tom hardly slept. The image of the barn lived in his mind, replaying each time he closed his eyes. The pile of fragile kittens, the way the puppy curled around them, those wide, determined eyes staring back at him. By morning, he was restless. He drank his coffee too quickly, pacing the kitchen, staring at the clock. Part of him wanted to forget it, to pretend none of it had happened, but he couldn't. The puppy was no ordinary dog, and those kittens, without it, they would be gone already. He checked his window. Just like before, the little one was already digging, paws working furiously, tail flicking with focus. It wriggled under the fence and vanished into the morning. This time, Tom didn't wait. He grabbed his jacket, stepped out, and followed. The path was the same. Through the hedges, across the damp grass, down the shadowed alley. The dog moved with purpose, like a creature who had walked this path 100 times. Tom kept his distance, crouching low whenever the puppy paused to sniff the ground. But the pup never looked back. Its attention was fixed ahead, on its secret. By the time they reached the barn, Tom's heart was pounding. The puppy slipped through the gap in the door. Tom crouched by the wall, peering inside. He forced himself to stay outside this time, hidden in the tall weeds, watching. What he saw made his chest ache. The puppy carried something in its mouth, a torn paper bag. Inside, a crust of bread. It dropped the bag clumsily near the kittens, nudged it open with its nose, and barked softly, almost encouraging them. The kittens sniffed, mewling. They were too small to eat much, but one gnawed at the edge, its tiny teeth scraping against stale bread. Tom covered his mouth, his throat tight. The pup wasn't just lying with them. It was feeding them. It licked each kitten, nudging them back into the safety of the group. One by one, it cleaned their fur with patience, smoothing the tangles, washing away the dirt. The kittens purred faintly, their tiny bodies trembling under the soft rasp of its tongue. When they settled, The puppy curled its small frame around him again, tucking its chin close, tail curved protectively. The barn was silent except for the soft sound of purring. Tom blinked hard. He felt something sting his eyes. This little one is giving everything it has, he thought, even scraps, even warmth from its own body. He leaned against the barn wall, heart heavy. Should he intervene? Logic screamed yes. The kittens needed proper care, milk, warmth, medicine. They wouldn't survive long on crusts of bread scavenged from alleys. But his chest argued no. If he stepped in, if he touched them, would the puppy see it as betrayal? Would he break something sacred? He rubbed his temple, conflicted. If I call the shelter, they'll take the kittens. But what about the puppy? Would anyone believe what it's done? Or would they laugh, call it instinct, dismiss the miracle I've seen with my own eyes? He stayed crouched for what felt like hours, watching, listening, thinking. The puppy shifted only once, lifting its head, ears twitching. Its eyes scanned the shadows, as if sensing he was near. For a moment, Tom thought it would bark, but then it lowered its head again, sighing softly, returning to its impossible duty. The sight crushed him. He thought of all the mornings before, when he had only half noticed the digging. All the times he'd shrugged, annoyed at the noise, never wondering why. The puppy had been carrying the secret life, day after day, without help, without praise. He clenched his fists. You shouldn't have to do this alone. But still he didn't move. He left only when the light outside grew brighter, when voices of neighbors began to rise in distant yards. He walked back slowly, his thoughts loud. At home, he sat on his porch, staring at the fence. The puppy's owner still hadn't noticed. Still didn't know her little one vanished every morning to play the role of mother to abandoned kittens. Tom's lips pressed tight. He felt the weight of choice heavier than ever. If he stepped in, he might save the kittens. But he might also break the bond. If he left it alone, maybe the puppy would continue. Maybe the kittens would survive another day. Or maybe not. He closed his eyes, exhaling long. What's the right thing? That night, as he lay in bed, the sound haunted him again. The cries of kittens, faint and fragile, echoing in his memory. He turned over, restless, torn in two. By morning, his mind was made up. He would return. But this time, he wouldn't just watch. He would try to help. Still, a shadow of doubt lingered. Would the puppy let me? Would it understand I mean no harm? Or would it see me as the enemy, the one trying to steal away its family? The thought chilled him, but he knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. The secret was too heavy to carry alone, and the kitten's time was running out. The next morning began differently. Tom wasn't the only one watching. From his kitchen window, he saw her, Marissa, the puppy's owner, standing on her porch, arms crossed, hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked tired, but sharp-eyed. Her gaze was fixed on the ground where the puppy dug, dirt flying in frantic sprays. Tom froze. She's finally noticed. The little dog squeezed on the fence like always, vanishing into the gap. But this time, Marissa didn't just sigh and call it back. She stepped down from the porch, followed the trail, and crouched by the hole. Her hand touched the loose soil. Her face tightened. Then she stood and looked around, frowning, suspicion written clear across her features. Tom's heart pounded. If she followed, she'd discover everything. The barn, the kittens, the impossible truth. He slipped outside, staying just far enough behind. The puppy trotted with its same determination, oblivious to the change. Through hedges, across yards, through that narrow alley, Marissa followed, her pace brisk, her shoes catching in weeds. Her lips moved as if whispering questions to herself. When they reached the barn, the puppy ducked through the gap. Marissa stopped dead at the doorway. Tom hung back in the grass, barely breathing. She bent low, peering in. Silence. Then a gasp. Her hand shot to her mouth. Tom saw the moment it hit her. The kittens, the puppy curled around them. The impossible picture in the shadows. She stumbled back a step, eyes wide, tears springing before she could stop them. The puppy barked once, proud, as if saying, look what I've done. Marissa pressed her hands to her chest, shaking her head. Oh, my God! she whispered, voice breaking. Tom stepped forward then, unable to hold back. You see it too, he said softly. She spun, startled, then squinted. Recognition softened her shock, but only slightly. Tom, you knew about this. He nodded slowly. I've been following for days. I didn't know how to tell you. Her eyes glistened. She turned back to the barn, to the fragile family inside. It's impossible. Why would he do this? Tom's voice was low, steady, because no one else did. Silence stretched between them, heavy and raw. Marissa stepped into the barn, crouching near. The puppy's tail wagged cautiously, eyes bright, but guarded. She reached out a hand. Sweet boy, she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. You've been carrying this all by yourself? The pup licked her fingers, then nudged the kitten closer, as though presenting it to her. Her breath caught. He thinks there is. Tom's throat tightened. There is now. She turned sharply, conflict blazing in her eyes. But Tom, they're starving. They'll die out here. I know. His voice cracked. But look at him. Look at what he's done already. If we rip them away, what happens to him? She pressed her palms together, trembling. I can't just leave them here. I have to take them in. And risk breaking him? Her lips parted, but no words came. The barn held the silence. Only the faint mews of kittens, the puppy's steady breath. Marissa wiped her face. He's just a baby himself. He doesn't know what he's doing. Tom shook his head. Doesn't he? He's kept them alive this long. Longer than anyone expected. She stared at the pup, torn. Her face shifted between awe and fear, between tenderness and practicality. Finally, she whispered, If I take them, I have to take him too. Let him stay with them. Otherwise, she trailed off, shaking her head. Tom exhaled slowly. Relief washed through him. Then maybe that's the answer. But even as he said it, doubt crept in. Would the kitten survive in a home, even with Marissa's care? Would the puppy accept the change? Or would it feel its mission stolen, its bond broken? The questions weighed on him. Marissa reached for one of the kittens, carefully lifting it. The tiny creature squirmed weakly in her palm, mewing. The puppy stiffened, eyes sharp, body tense. Shoo, she soothed. It's okay, little one. I'm just helping. The puppy whined, pawing at her wrist, torn between trust and fear. Tom stepped closer, voice gentle. Let him see. Let him know you're not taking them away. You're giving them more. She nodded, lowering the kitten just enough for the pup to sniff. The puppy's tail wagged uncertainly. Then it licked the kitten's head before pressing its nose to Marissa's hand, as though granting permission. Her tears spilled fresh. She kissed the puppy's forehead. You're a better soul than most people I know. Tom swallowed hard. The barn felt different now. Not a secret place of shadows, but a fragile sanctuary. A balance that could shatter with one wrong step. As Marissa held the kitten, the others stirred, crying louder. The puppy whined, torn between tending to them and watching her. Tom whispered, This is a choice, Marissa. Do we leave them in his care, or do we bring them into ours? Either way, it changes everything. Her hand trembled. She looked back at Tom, eyes filled with doubt. What if I make the wrong choice? He met her gaze, voice low. Then we make it together. The puppy barked softly, as if urging them both. The barn held its fragile family close, but the question hung heavy in the air, unanswered. They moved the kittens that same afternoon. Marissa lined a cardboard box with soft towels and tucked it gently under her arm. Tom carried another. Between them, 6 fragile lives were lifted out of the shadows of the barn, out of the dust and the cobwebs, into the light of day. The puppy trotted beside them, tail wagging nervously, eyes never leaving the boxes. Every few steps, it jumped up to sniff, to check, to reassure itself that the family it had fought for was still safe. Marissa glanced at Tom. He won't let them out of his sight, will he? Tom shook his head, smiling faintly. Would you? Back at Marissa's home, the kittens were placed in a basket lined with fleece blankets. A small heater hummed softly nearby, filling the room with warmth. The little one stirred, mewing, their tiny bodies curling against the softness. The puppy climbed in after them, ignoring Marissa's protests. It circled once, then lay down, curling itself around the fragile pile exactly as it had in the barn. Only now, the light was bright, the air clean, the danger gone. Tom stood in the doorway, heart aching. "He's not letting go," he whispered. Marissa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Then neither will I." Word spread quickly. Neighbors noticed the holes under the fence, the early morning escapes, the strange sight of Marissa and Tom carrying boxes out of the old barn. At first, people laughed. "A puppy raising kittens?" they said. "Impossible." But then they saw it with their own eyes. They saw the pup lie in the basket, licking each kitten clean. They saw it nudge the smallest one closer to the milk bottle Marissa held. They saw how the kittens purred when pressed into its warm fur. And slowly, disbelief gave way to wonder. The story spread beyond the street. Friends told friends. Pictures were shared. Soon, strangers stood outside Marissa's gate, hoping to catch a glimpse. Children pressed their faces to the fence, whispering with wide eyes. The puppy never seemed to notice. It stayed with its family, proud and tireless. Tom watched it all unfold. He saw how people softened, how their voices changed. The same neighbors who once complained about barking or holes in the fence now leaned over to ask, "How are the kittens today? Is the puppy still with them?" Marissa would smile, tired but glowing. "Yes, still with them." And every time, the answer carried the weight of a miracle. Weeks passed. The kittens grew stronger. Their eyes brightened. Their bodies filled out. They learned to climb, to stumble, to play. But even as they grew bold, they always returned to the warmth of the puppy who had been there from the beginning. One afternoon, Tom sat on the porch with Marissa. They watched the basket together. A kitten wrestled with the pup's ear. Another pounced on its tail. The puppy endured it all patiently, tail sweeping the floor in slow, steady arcs. "You ever think about how close we were to missing all this?" Tom asked quietly. Marissa's voice was soft. "Every day." He nodded. "If he hadn't dug that first hole, if you hadn't followed, if I just stayed inside and ignored it," she finished for him, "they'd be gone." Silence lingered, heavy with what-ifs. Then Marissa reached down, scratching the puppy behind the ears. It closed its eyes, sighing contentedly. "You saved them," she whispered. The words hung in the air, and though she was looking at the puppy, Tom felt them too. By the end of the month, the story had reached the local paper, then the radio, then television. Reporters came, cameras flashing. They crowded Marissa's living room, scribbling notes, asking questions. How did he find them? Why do you think he stayed? What does it mean? Tom stood in the corner, overwhelmed. Marissa held the puppy in her arms while the kittens tumbled around her feet. She answered as best she could, though her voice shook. "I don't know why he did it," she said finally, looking down at the little dog. "All I know is he saw a life that needed him, and he didn't turn away." The room fell quiet. Even the reporters stopped scribbling for a moment. Tom swallowed hard, blinking back tears. The weeks turned into months. The kittens grew into young cats, sleek and strong. Each one found a home, friends, neighbors, families who had been touched by the story. But always, before they left, they spent one last night curled against the puppy who had raised them. And always, the pup licked their heads, nuzzled them close, and let them go. When the last one left, the puppy sat by the window for hours, tail still, eyes searching. Marissa knelt beside it, whispering softly, "You did your job, sweet boy. You gave them a life." Tom stood in the doorway, his chest tight. He had seen love before in people, in families, in fleeting moments. But this was something deeper. An instinct turned into devotion, a bond that had no reason to exist and yet refused to break. It changed him. It changed Marissa. It changed everyone who had seen it. Because in the end, it wasn't just about kittens or a puppy. It was about the simple, stubborn truth that life, when given love, will fight to survive. That night, Tom walked home under quiet sky. He paused at the fence, the same fence where it had all begun. The frantic scratching, the hole in the dirt, the mystery that pulled him from his safe routine. Now, the hole was filled. The yard was quiet. But the memory lived sharp and clear. He smiled faintly, shaking his head. "You taught us all something, little one," he murmured. And in the stillness, it felt like the world agreed. The story ended not in tragedy, but in transformation. The kittens were safe. The puppy was proud. And the people who had doubted, who had laughed, now carried a piece of the miracle with them. A reminder that sometimes the smallest among us carry the greatest hearts.